Ah, hello there. My name is Willis, and I'm here to talk about the civil rights. Oh, hello again. We are about to embark on a journey through the time of the civil rights. In this journey, we will meet important figures such as Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X.
Since the inception of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, giving African Americans rights, it has been a struggle for African Americans to gain equal footing with whites across America. Since their inception, the South was ablaze with racial hatred. Groups like the KKK instilled fear into the minds of black families across the South and to much of the rest of the nation. Lynchings were a common occurrence throughout the South. Many black figures, such as Booker T. Washington and Marcus Garvey, made impacts. However, very few made a difference. Washington wanted to assimilate into the white culture. However, Marcus Garvey wanted to separate from whites and move back to Africa. These two figures made impacts on black America. However, there had yet to be a civil rights leader that captured the attention of both whites and blacks. This changed in the mid-1950s. Jim Crow laws separated both whites and blacks in many states, especially in the South. Martin Luther King has been considered one of the greatest figures in the African American civil rights movement. He is known for his acts of civil disobedience. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister and also a prominent leader. Martin Luther King Jr. led the Montgomery bus boycotts and also delivered one of the greatest speeches in American history. His speech, the I Have a Dream speech, is one of the most recognizable in history. Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia. His father was a reverend, so he was a very religious man. Martin Luther King Jr. attended Booker T. Washington High School. King eventually became a pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. He has a doctorate in philosophy from Boston University. Martin Luther King Jr. held a pivotal role in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. In 1957, he served as its first president. King's efforts also led him to the 1963 March on Washington, where he gave his family.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream. My four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s life of a civil rights activist would not have come to be if it wasn't for a woman and her determination. Rosa Parks was born on February 4th, 1913. Little did she know she would jumpstart the fight for civil rights and create one of the most prominent examples of civil disobedience in the modern era. On December 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was riding the bus as she always would. This particular day, the bus was overcrowded, and the bus driver ordered her to give up her seat in the colored section to a white passenger when the white section was full. When Parks refused to give up her seat, she was arrested. She was bailed out of jail by the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP the next evening. The Montgomery NAACP and Women's Political Council banded together and created the Montgomery bus boycott. The first day of the boycott, the black community rode in carpools, used black-operated cabs, and walked to work, some as far as 20 miles. On the second day, the Montgomery NAACP met with the Montgomery Improvement Association and their newly elected president, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The boycott lasted for a total of 381 days, ending with the desegregation of buses in Montgomery, Alabama. This act of civil disobedience is credited with providing a major spark in the modern civil rights era. It gave Martin Luther King Jr. household recognition and laid the foundation for the ensuing fight for rights. On the other side of the civil rights spectrum, there are those who believe that assimilation and equality is not the correct answer. There are some who believe there should be punishment for whites, or those who believe in black superiority. One of these figures is Malcolm X. Malcolm Little was born on May 19, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska. Growing up, he had 8 siblings. Malcolm X was a human rights leader and a Muslim minister. His father and his uncle were both killed by the KKK. At the age of 20, Malcolm went to prison for breaking and entering. There he became a member of the Nation of Islam. Once he got out of prison, Malcolm soon became a prominent leader in the Nation of Islam. He preached black pride and white intimidation. His speeches were incredibly polarizing and often separated races instead of desegregating them. Eventually, in March 1964, Malcolm left the Nation of Islam. He then traveled throughout the world in places such as Africa and the Middle East. After traveling to Mecca, Malcolm X changed his views to those similar to Martin Luther King Jr. and separated from the ideologies of Marcus Garvey. Almost a year and a half after leaving the Nation of Islam, he was assassinated. He was assassinated while giving a speech at the Audubon Club. Little was killed by a member of the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X is considered one of the most influential African Americans in United States history. In 1965, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, led by the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., made Selma, Alabama their main focus for African American voting rights. They made this effort because, although the Civil Rights Act had been passed in 1964, making it illegal to discriminate, there was still very much segregation and discrimination throughout the South. Much of the southern state governments held strong opposition to desegregation, including Alabama Governor George Wallace. In March of 1965, protesters attempted to march from Selma to the state capital of Montgomery, but during the march, they were met with violent resistance from the state authorities. The images of police brutality captured the attention of people around the country and sparked outcry from those outside of the situation. The marchers eventually made it, and they achieved their goal. This march was very important because it helped raise awareness for the African American civil rights movement. Eventually, the Voting Rights Act passed years later.
Once again, the heart of America is heavy. The spirit of America weeps for a tragedy that denies the very meaning of our land. The life of a man who symbolized the freedom and faith of America has been taken. But it is the fiber and the fabric of the republic that's being tested. If we are to have the America that we mean to have, all men of all races, all regions, all religions must stand their ground to deny violence its victory in this sorrowful time and in all times to come. Last evening, after receiving the terrible news of Dr. King's death, my heart went out to his family and to his people, especially to the young Americans who I know must sometimes wonder if they are to be denied a fullness of life because of the color of their skin.